A common occurrence you'll find in gacha games is a general lower quality of tutorial characters, those who you receive at the start of the game. In most cases, barring exceptions, players are quick to discard said free units the moment they come across any new character, which likely is intentional by the developers. It would make little sense for your starting lineup to be top tier from a profitability standpoint, as that would give them less reason to pull for new characters. Initially, Honkai style appeared to be the same way. Danheng, March 7th, and Physical Trailblazer aren't the most efficient choices for a long-term investment. Unsurprisingly, they were cast aside the moment players got their hands on other characters, for a while at least. Earlier this year, the Trailblazer received their Imaginary Harmony form, serving as a centerpiece of the emerging Super Break team. It would be no exaggeration to say that Harmony MC is one of the most influential supports in the game right now, which is incredible given they're completely free to obtain. Now it seems like March wants in on the fun. In version 2.4, she was given a new variant as well, coincidentally also the imaginary element. It seems Hoyo has a penchant for making all their free units imaginary. I'm not complaining. In light of the success of Dr. Ratio and HMC, as well as the inclusion of March 8th as I started calling her, I wanted to analyze the game's free units and talk about why not only is it a good thing they're so strong, but also why they have to be. A point of interest to Honkai style that distinguishes it from its predecessor Genshin Impact is the actual need for lots of characters. We have 3 game modes that routinely cycle their enemies, blessings, and scenarios, requiring players to make as diverse of an array of teams as possible to account for all of them. While every now and then you can brute force your way through a cycle, for optimal and comfortable clears, elemental and situational coverage are of paramount importance. 4-star characters are meant to serve as a bedrock of the game, considering they're much easier to obtain, whether by pulling or receiving them for free through events and whatnot. The ideal goal is to make free characters just good enough to give the player a fighting chance against whatever the game has to offer. Over in Genshin, for example, that's what the Power 5 is intended to fulfill. Honkai style doesn't really have anything like that, however, compounding that with the game's measurably higher endgame difficulty, and it makes sense why a sizable portion of the community has been complaining about how exhausting it is to keep up with everything. I forget exactly which video it was, but I remember saying something along the lines of Starl needing a Power 5 more than Genshin does, because there's actual difficulty in this game. Fortunately, though Starl has a plethora of game modes and tons of different scenarios, Hoyo has tried to give players enough options to handle them so as not to make the game a full-on character check. Don't get me wrong, it still feels like a character check more than people are comfortable with, but in their defense, units like Ranmei, Firefly, Acheron, Aventurine, Kafka, Black Swan, Fushuen, and whatnot excel in multiple game modes and in multiple scenarios. But that in and of itself carries a potential issue. What if you don't have them? Or more pressingly, what if you can't obtain them? That is where the free characters come in. In this type of environment, they don't just serve to give players units to play with, they actively function as a lifeline. It's understandable for a player to not have all the best characters, either because they weren't around when they were available, or they were simply lacking in funds to pull for them. All the same, they should be given a fair shot at clearing endgame content, and I believe that's what Hoyo is trying to do with its free/4-star characters. Just cause she's a new kid on the block, let's talk about March. Instead of being a standalone character in the same fashion as Danheng, she decides to instead put on a new change of clothes, pick up a couple swords, and then just declare a new path and element, cause why the hell not? Like Trailblazer, March can switch between her hunt and preservation forms at her leisure, making her entirely free. By extension, her Eidolons are also free to obtain, which is funny given her original form's Eidolons are not. Again, not complaining. Anyways, March takes on a very interesting playstyle. The TLDR is that her functions differ based on who she's supporting, but for the most part she's a hybrid between hypercarry support and break support. Kind of a mixture between attacking and buffing, if that makes sense. Her skill gives 10% unconditional bonus speed to an ally of choice that lasts indefinitely, so just by being on the team she can help out the main attacker with getting to key breakpoints. Then she can further buff their stats with their empowered basic attack, granting an incredible 60% bonus crit damage and 36% break effect for 2 turns. This has to be one of the strongest buffs I've ever seen on a 4-star character, especially considering it's on a passive trace, not even her skill or ultimate. The way to obtain her empowered basic attack is through a combination of basic attacking or having her marked ally use a combination of 7 attacks and ultimates. Naturally, anyone who can attack a bunch of times in quick succession will be a worthy candidate for her. Immediately, follow-up attackers like Dr. Ratio and Topaz come to mind, as they can charge up her talent much faster. Her second Eidolon emphasizes that even more by having it so March throws out a follow-up attack whenever her marked ally uses an attack or skill, with the follow-up in question having the same properties as her own basic attack, meaning she gains 2 points of charge per ally action. Conveniently, players who joined the game prior to 2.2 were given a free Dr. Ratio, so automatically you have a decent pair in these 2 imaginary units. On the flip side, when you also account for the 36% break effect on her A2 trace, as well as her A4 causing her own attacks to masquerade as the same element of her marked ally, she can be a great facilitator for break-focused units, Firefly and Boothill, which by extension grants March a spot in Super Break teams. If it wasn't obvious, March 8's dual wielding reflects her dual supportive nature, but in light of holding 2 swords, she can do a fair bit of damage on her own. Her empowered basic attack deals 240% at base to an enemy spread across 3 hits. with each hit having a 60% chance to strike again, effectively meaning March can do 240, 320, 400, or 480% if you can win the 60-40 thrice over. Then her ultimate's another 240% attack and makes her next empowered basic attack strike 5 times for 400 base while having an increased chance to proc up to 3 more additional attacks for a total of 640% damage. So on top of helping her main carry do big damage, March basically shoots out damage of her own. At this point we're just making fun of Yanqing, aren't we? Overall, March 8th is kind of a sub-DPS. She mainly focuses on buffing her main carry, who in turn can help her deal damage too. It's reminiscent of the interaction with Herta and Himeko, where one helps the other, who then reciprocates, and everyone gets stronger for it. So if you feel confident that you don't need to bring a sustained character, then March could be an extra buffer who can increase your party's total DPS. Her power budget is decidedly higher than most 4 stars of previous versions, or even some 5 stars, and from my first impressions of her, having tinkered around with her in the early access and also talking to other creators, she's right around the same value as Gallagher and Dr, maybe a bit higher. Case in point, March 8th will be one of the best 4 stars in the game. Speaking of Gallagher, let's briefly go over him as well. Everyone was more or less aware that Gallagher had lots of potential. Though we have other 4-star healers like Natasha and Lynx, Gallagher's break-related functions gave him room for future improvement, since unlike the other two, he had actual offensive capability in the form of his empowered basic attack and ultimate. That potential would then be fully realized with Harmony Trailblazer, another free character who channels break effect and toughness damage into true offensive threats. Thanks to their ability to give everyone super break damage, Harmony MC can effectively make any team with break units a competitive endgame staple by having them all do 6-figure damage to enemies with attacks and skills even if they themselves have no stats in offense. Though for maximum efficiency, it's best when you pair HMC with Ranmei, so it's not entirely free per se. But point being, Harmony MC, Gallagher, and March are all significantly stronger than most of the first generation of 4-star characters like Guinefan, Serval, Lynx, Asta, what have you. Not to say those units aren't usable anymore, but there's a clear gap in power between version 1 and version 2's free characters. A shining virtue of the recent free characters we've gotten thus far is that they're party agnostic. Dr. Ratio's a follow-up attacker, but his playstyle is self-contained, enabling him to be fielded alongside a wide variety of allies. The only thing you really need on him are debuffs to maximize the chance of his follow-up attack. So while his best team is the IPC team, you can, in theory, just bring him alongside any team with an open spot that can apply enough debuffs for him and just let him do extra damage on the side. Gallagher's full strength is housed in super break teams, but he is first and foremost a healer, and breaking toughness is a universal objective across all teams. It's not like only super break teams care about weakness breaking. So if you want, you can bring him into Akron teams, among other choices. Harmony MC is only one job, but instead of being the endpoint, they're the base. From then on, you can conceptualize any team you want around them because they're the foundation. Obviously having Ranmei is integral to optimal performance, but from then on, the world's your oyster. You can make a party that overtly revolves around break damage like Firefly or Boothill, or if you want, you can field Harmony MC alongside Himeko, who despite not being a break-focused character, does have coincidental synergy in the form of her talent. The same goes for March. She was conceptualized around being flexible, consolidating DPS and buffing into one. She can do damage while also helping other people do damage. For my money, her 2 main niches based on the units we have right now are going to be Super Break with Harmony MC or follow-up spam with the IPC team, most likely Topaz or any future follow-up attacker. However, there is room for you to try her out with other characters. Seela can turn refresh a lot, getting tons of attacks off from March's talent, and because she's a hyper carry, March can funnel a ton of damage into Seela. Thanks to her A4 trace allowing her to shred toughness gauges based on the element of her ally, her own imaginary element is irrelevant. She effectively has quasi-universal toughness reduction, assuming at least one member on your party is of an element the enemy target is vulnerable to. Considering that every account is different in regards to what characters are on it, Hoyo gave those free units a broad range of use cases to allow players to use them regardless of who else they have. And most of all, if nothing else, they made it so these characters can be used alongside each other. Gallagher, March, and Harmony MC make for a decent combo in and of themselves. Where I'm going with this is that Hoyo made these free characters really good because they kind of have to if they want to keep doing what they're doing. Honkai style is expanding on its combat scenarios and increasing its demands. You can see this just by looking at all the new units that came out. They've released 2 5-stars each and every version since day 1. And not only that, but they've been releasing a new endgame mode once every like 3 patches or so. And not only that, but power creep is relevant in this game. It's not quite as bad as other gachas where every week a new unit comes out with triple the DPS of last week's character, but it is noticeable. Look no further than Yunli, who just came out in this version too. She's a physical destruction character with a focus on counterattacking. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The power scaling of version 2 from both characters and content is measurably greater than in version 1. We're at a point where version 2 4-stars like March, Gallagher, and HMC are stronger or more valuable than version 1 5-stars. I consider Trailblazer a 4-star even though technically they're classified as a 5-star. Health scaling is growing, bosses are dealing more damage, the expectations of a character have gone up a noticeable amount too. There's a lot more role consolidation. You have characters who can wear multiple hats, support more than one person, damage more than one enemy with the same quality as those who only damage one enemy. The list goes on. While that's not a bad thing in a vacuum, if the game progresses faster than free-to-play players can keep up, long term that will be a detriment for the player base. If Harmony MC, March 8th, Gallagher and Dr. Ratio were given the same power budgets or capabilities as Day 1 characters like Yanqing, Welt, Asta, Natasha, or March 7th, they would be virtually unusable in the current setting. Granted, those units alone are not enough to carry you through the endgame. You still need to have 3 or 4 parties decently equipped and made. By extension, you're still expected to have at least a half dozen of the top tier 5 stars. But it's a good thing that they're giving us free-to-play options that are competitive, if not best in slot for certain teams. That can alleviate the pressure of having to pull for a bunch of characters, especially for teams that require a full party of 5 stars. I'm not saying that Hoyo needs to make all free characters top tier. I mean, it would be nice, don't get me wrong, but this game makes you use a lot of characters. I forget the exact numbers, but if you tally up all the free jades and pulls you get from events, world exploration, dailies, and the endgame modes of each version, so far on average it amounts to just over 100 according to this chart. Which means, assuming you hit soft pity, you can expect about a 5.5 per version or 3 5 stars every 2 versions. Bear in mind it takes 2 5 stars to get one of the banner units if you fail the 50-50, so realistically you can only get 1 feature 5 star per version. That alone means you can only pull for one of the 2 featured units every version, and Honkai Star is scaling a lot faster than that. Furthermore, MOC, Pure Fiction, and Epoch Shadow cycles are typically geared towards whatever playstyle the new character is part of. For example, when Firefly came out, they made Apocalyptic Shadow and MOC very break focused, which is fine. Nothing wrong with promoting the new character by having them be the easiest way to clear that content, but you should still give players the ability to do so without them, albeit with greater effort or clever strategizing. Ideally, those who can't afford to or don't want to pull for Firefly can still complete the content using Harmony MC, Runmei if they have her, and Gallagher. Continuing off that, March 8 can be a strong addition for either super break teams or follow-up attackers in the event you're missing a component for either. Basically, it's a good thing Hoyo is making 3/4 star units meta relevant, not out of convenience, but at this point out of necessity. I just hope they don't stop here. We still have a ton of areas we need more help in. For example, where the f is the 4-star tank? We still don't have a 4-star AoE shielder or cover tank yet. I also think it would be good to give more 4-star Harmony supports. Back in version 1 they gave us Yukong and Hanya, but those units are extremely niche. A big problem with Runmei is that there's only one of her. It would be nice to have a 4-star Harmony character who can buff double carry comps in light of there being a lot of them nowadays. Although 2.5 already trip marketed most, who is a Lightning Hunt unit, so unless I plan to release 2 4-star units in 2.5, we'll have to wait until 2.6. Anyway, it's great that they made March a free character with free Eidolons because free-to-play players are already spread thin trying to pull for 5 stars. They've done a great job with Gallagher, Harmony MC, and March, so here's hoping they give us more meta-relevant units who are free. Or, just a suggestion, maybe we can get another free 5-star unit? I mean, they did it once before, there's always a chance they can do it again. What are your thoughts on March's new imaginary form? Do you like her gameplay or not? Feel free to share in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Vars, join my Discord server, and why not check out my 4-star characters video if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.